Hey everybody, I'm Stuart from Ardent Training, and what we've got coming up in this webinar is a little bit of a fun get to know us as instructors. So what we've done is we've got 6 or 7 topics, and each one of us instructors from Ardent Training has chosen a photo to briefly talk about and share on the subject. Now, some of it's from 2023 and some of it's looking ahead to 2024. Now, we aired this live for our students on the 30th of December 2023. So if you want to get into some of our live webinars, then all you need to do is sign up for our course. But you can also just carry on, watch this here, and learn all about some of the stories and experiences that our instructors have had. So hope you enjoy. Feel free to comment below. And yeah, we'd love to hear about your plans for 2024.
Armed with Google Maps, satellite images, a drone and a dinghy, we went and scoped out some new spots.
It's a very special place and very unusual. So that's why I put this picture in there. To sit by icebergs is a pretty unusual experience. So that's why it's there.
Looks awesome, Alan. But your face is so funny in that photo. You look so red.
Sorry, I thought, I can't believe Alan's in that water. Alan hates cold water. So it explains it all now that you've told us, and I know that it was warm water.
I had no doubt. I saw it and I thought, that water must be warm.
As we were about to leave a big iceberg, I think you can see it just in the distance there, came past and dropped off a smaller iceberg that got jammed in that entrance there. We realised that we couldn't actually get out, so we had to re-anchor, tie the lines back ashore, and had to wait a good week for this iceberg to break down enough that we could actually get out. So we did go up to it a few times with the dinghy and an ice axe and try and hack at it, but we didn't really get much more than ice for your GMTs.
Until we bought our own boat, I never appreciated cruising. I always worked on boats, and I had schedules and timetables, and now we cruise, and it's a whole different world, and it's just a whole new side of sailing, which I love, out on the water with my family.
I love it how you managed to pick a photo where both of them have got their mouths stuffed with marshmallows.
Yeah, clearly having the boat centralised was more important than...
Look at them, they got a stick in each hand. They're always going to have marshmallows.
Yeah, it's just amazing how you could get boats in between the rocks in such shallow water. And when you look at it and you first go up, you're like, there's no way we're fitting a boat in there. And then you actually think about how you do it, and it's totally fine.
But yeah, nice little spot.
Did the kids leave you out there for 6 hours to get that photo then?
Yeah. They dropped me off on the dinghy, and it was the tide was horrible at that point, so there was a swell rolling in. It wasn't nice getting Ellen off that rock. I got properly dunked.
It's one of those things that it seems to have caused a lot of panic in a lot of places, and working with Silurian and Hebridean Whale and Dolphin Trust, there's been a bit of contact made about this.
So this is a funny one in a way. This photo or montage is our team of instructors, and actually depending on which course you take or which course you are taking, and also a little bit on which time or day of the week you get in touch with your queries, you'll probably have bumped into some of us, but not all of us. But we're all here today, and that is the 6 of us: Tom, Alan, Charlie, me, Charlie, and Stu. And we're all going to be sharing a bit of our 2023 review today. So back over to Stu.
So as Ed said, just reiterate, it was just about getting to know us a little bit more. So we thought maybe we could just share a few photos of our sailing experiences, just so that you get to know a bit more about us rather than what we're doing and kind of answering your queries and marking your assessments and exams and stuff. So I've got a few different criteria. I think we've got 7 criteria in total to share with you this evening. So we've got 2023 sailing memories, our favourite boat sailed at any time, 2023 news stories, our favourite anchorages, 2024 sailing plans, unusual places to tie up our boats, and 2024 sailing goals. So first up, 2023 sailing memories, and I believe straight up were Charlie.
So yeah, this is me and a friend Jonathan. We took part in the Scottish Islands Peaks race. So that's a adventure race based in the west coast of Scotland, combining running and sailing. So we started in Oban with a 10k run, sailed to the Isle of Mull, where we ran up to the highest point of Mull and back down, sailed down to Jura and ran the 3 paps of Jura, and then sailed around the Mull of Kintyre up to Arran to do Goat Fell on Arran. It was amazing. It took us about 3 days because there was absolutely no wind. It's my first time doing it, and it was incredibly knackering. I don't think I've ever been quite that tired. We definitely didn't stick to the watch schedule because we were all so excited about the whole thing, so didn't get any sleep. I cut my foot quite badly on Jura in the middle of the night in about 40 knots of wind. So it was an adventure, and one that I'll definitely do again. Now I can forget all the horrible memories of it.
I think you're mad, Charlie.
I mean, a highlight of 2023, but probably one of the highlights of my life, to be honest, was Kirsten finishing her Golden Globe race. So the GGR, if you haven't been following, is a retro round the world race based on Robin Knox-Johnson's first circumnavigation of the world. And so the race is kind of recreated. And I was lucky to be Kirsten's team manager, and she won the race. And so going to the finish line to welcome her in after she hadn't seen a soul in about 9 months, and helping her sail the boat from the finish line to the dock for the last time. Although it was only a very short sailing experience, it was definitely top of 2023 for me.
I don't know how lucky you were to be team manager. I think you're the one who put her up to it, didn't you?
Yeah, well,
I think it's your responsibility.
Cool. My highlight of 2023 was I really love sailing at sunset, and I really love sailing in my home waters, which is where this photo's from. And so yeah, I managed to tick that off earlier on this year in May. I was on an exam at this point, examining some potential yachtmaster students. And it's just so nice to be back in the waters that I used to sail day in, day out. And yeah, as you can see, it was a lovely evening. And it's always just special, I think, to sometimes go back to where you started and realize how far you've come. So that for me was my kind of on the water highlight this year.
This is me going for I didn't have a mainsail up there, but going for a quick blat across the Solent, which I have spent tens of thousands of miles bouncing up and down the walls of the Solent, and I haven't been back there for 5 or 6, maybe slightly more years. So this was just a quick trip from the Hamble over to the Cowes and back again the following day, and it was just very nice to be home, or back in home waters, I suppose, as Stu was saying. But no, absolutely great. Not a whole heap of wind, but just enough to get us going.
A bit more wind than I had in my photo for sure.
Yeah.
So this is up in the west coast of Scotland. This is us coming into Barra in June. And maybe you could say it's a downside of AIS, but as we were coming into the entrance, we got a call. Somebody had seen us on AIS. They'd broken down. They'd got a rope around the propeller, and they asked for a tow in. But conditions were very benign, and we thought, well, we'd be the good Samaritan. Anyway, so we came over to them, took a tow line, and we towed them into Barra Harbour. It was interesting. There was a ferry coming at the same time, and I kind of got on the radio just to make sure they were aware of the situation. But it was very pleasing that they had listened to the conversation. They knew exactly what was going on, and so they kind of kept clear of us. And we pulled them into Barra, put them into a situation they could drop their anchor and then sort out their rope around the prop. And as a reward, I got 6 bottles of wine. We got 6 bottles of wine, so it was well worth it. So, yeah, leave your AIS on.
6 bottles of wine. I'm surprised you could remember it at all, Alan.
Oh.
It looks like me. My sailing memory, or we were just out cruising on our boat, Mifa, but I don't know, we're a bit funny. We always try to get an anchorage to ourselves. We don't like to be able to see any other boats because we're weirdos like
Yeah,
that.
it doesn't sound good, does
It doesn't sound good, but it's what we do. But I think Scotland's getting a bit busier than it used to be. And it was quite hard to do that. So we had to go a little bit off track, and armed with Google Maps, satellite images, a drone and a dinghy, we went and scoped out some new spots. And I mean, the top one isn't really a new spot. That's just an idea of the image you can get with the drone. You can really see the shallows and some of the rocks and the deep where we are. But the bottom one is a little corner we tucked in where absolutely, if you looked at the chart, you wouldn't dream of going and dropping your anchor there. But, we took the dinghy in, had a little scout around, took the drone overhead, and found ourselves a nice quiet corner to tuck up for a couple of days. So, but that's what I like doing, a bit of adventure.
Yeah, we do take it very carefully, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. That's fun, isn't it?
I've just taken some bearings on those 2 islands there, Ed, so I know exactly where you are.
To be fair, there's a busy anchorage just round the corner. But we went and had a look at that and we're like, oh, no, it's too busy for us. And then retreated back to a quiet corner.
Was there one other boat in it?
No, there's at least 3. I'm sure there's about 3 other boats in there. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. I think the common theme of that of all those photos was there wasn't very much wind in any of them.
Yeah, mine was flat calm as well.
I never get a camera out when there's wind.
Yeah. Well, we're a bit busier.
You've got enough going on.
Yeah.
So moving on, a favourite boat sail. This is just any time, and it's just to allow us to just share a little bit about the variety that we all bring to the team.
Well, that's a rubbish photo, but it was. This is a Far 65, which they made 5 of them for the Millennium Round the World race, which is very similar to the Clipper, but it was crewed by semi-professionals back on for the Millennium. And I sailed this particular boat for a couple of seasons. And they're made out of Kevlar. They're proper serious heavy boats, or heavy duty boats. But I sailed this for a few seasons, doing a lot of racing, a lot around the Solent, around the English Channel. And I did the Fastnet campaign on this boat as well, but it's really is very much a go anywhere boat. It's superb. And it was very nicely sponsored by Mount Gay Rum, which was not a bad sponsor at all.
Was it comfortable, Tom?
No, not in the slightest. No, it was no. All the bunks in there were pipes, so it was all pipe cots throughout the whole thing. Galley in the middle, which was quite nice actually. The cooker was directly behind the mast step, with sideways gimbal, which was quite cool. Yeah, it's a proper beast of a boat.
Go on. How fast?
Quickest I had out of it was 16.2, I think, like that. I also had it underwater as well, pushing through some fairly heavy waves, going through
I wouldn't admit to that.
Yeah, well,
it's been recorded, Tom.
Yeah. It floated afterwards.
Right, opposite end of the extreme, really. This is a beautiful boat called Tyree. She was built by a friend of mine, Brian Hodge. He was a sort of amateur boat builder. He built 5 or 6 boats. She's built from timber. She was built here down in a farmer's field in Cornwall. And she's just a beautiful example of a traditional sailing boat. A Raymond Wall 28, nobody's heard of them, very similar to a Twister, which is a very well-known make of boat. Really well constructed in wood, and the reason I liked her so much, A, she was traditional, B, she sailed like a real dream. Whatever point of sailing you're on, you could let go of the tiller and she would sail herself. She was really perfect, a lovely boat. The sad side of that is that we had to get rid of her. She was owned by my other half, Sue, and we did try cruising on her, but 28 feet with limitations on fuel and water, and dare I say, there was a toilet in the middle of the saloon, which was a bit I found quite unpleasant. So eventually, when I bought my boat, she had to go, but she was sold to a lovely retired surgeon in Ireland, and she's now in retirement up in Kinsale, where she's loved to bits and lots of money spent on it. She's a beautiful, beautiful traditional boat.
Here's a not quite so beautiful, but still quite old boat. Yeah, my favourite boat. I've sailed some fast boats. I've sailed some very expensive boats, very well designed boats. But the one I've had the best time on is Silurian. And it's a charity that's close to a lot of our hearts for the instructors, I think. A lot of us have skippered this boat. And it's owned by a charity. It's been owned by a charity for a long time, and it's suffered a little bit from charity budget. They don't always have the most amount of money to spend on it, but the sort of sheer hard work and dedication of the team keep it going. But more importantly, it's big, it's old, it's slow, it's fat. It doesn't sail particularly well. It doesn't motor great either, but it does everything okay. But it's so much fun. I've had so much fun on it. We'd have a team of 10 on there, and I don't know, you're all working towards a common goal. Lots of jokes, lots of games, good dinners while it's raining outside, warm dinners sat inside, looking out the windows. Yeah, I don't know. It's probably just about the most fun I've had in my life working on that boat. So it's got to be my favourite boat, isn't it?
Yeah, there you go. You make me seem shallow now. Both mine are multi-million pound boats. Cheers, Ed. Um, so on the left there, you've got TS Royalist, and there's been 2 TS Royalists. There was one that was decommissioned in 2014, maybe, and then another that was, and then we built a new one, and that was commissioned in 2015, I think. And I was lucky to be on the team that helped build the new one. And so, of course, it's very close to my heart, both the Royalists, actually. I spent a lot of time on those boats, and they started me off in my career, and so I'll always be very grateful to them. But then Pelagic Australis, I couldn't not put it down because it's just such a great boat. It's just so well designed. We've taken it to some miserable places, and yet always felt so safe on board. And even down to, you know, how the spacing apart of the winches, how you can kind of hunker down and kind of wedge yourself so that you feel safe, like you're not going to get thrown overboard, and everything's oversized, everything's so well made and so simple as well. Nothing's overcomplicated. You just can't ever think for a minute that you're not on a really special boat when you're sailing Pelagic Australis. So.
It is now called Witness, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Been sold to Greenpeace and now called Witness, but it's Pelagic Australis to us.
So, yeah, mine is kind of along the same lines as Tom. This is an ex-round the world yacht drum from the 85-86 Whitbread race, formerly owned by Simon Le Bon of Duran Duran. And she was then owned by Arnold Clark, and he kept her at Rue Marina on a mooring. And that's where I grew up and started sailing. And I always remember driving past and looking out, and there was this massive boat out on the mooring. It was like twice the size of anything else at the time. We're going back kind of over 20 years now. And I always remember getting told, oh, if you stick at your sailing, you know, maybe someone will, you know, like pay you to sail boats like that one day. And I was just like, nah, no chance. Like, why would someone do that? And yeah, sure enough, I ended up skippering her. So I sailed on her for cruise a while, and then and then I skippered her for 4 or 5 years, and mainly just up and down the west coast of Scotland. But it was just really cool to sail such a big boat and such a powerful boat as well, that when she leaned over, you actually felt the power as she kind of surged forwards. and obviously the history with her as well. The one thing that made her super famous was in the Fastnet race in 85. She lost her keel and turned upside down, and a few of them were stuck inside. But she's been through a few wars since then, and at the time we used to just get to sail her up and down the Clyde. And even sailing her on the Clyde, I managed to beat Tom's record, and 17.8 was my fastest speed for that. On the Clyde.
Probably a lot lighter than that 60. That 60.
Oh, I don't know, 45 tons.
Maybe, yeah. Okay.
So this one's me, and this is a boat called Sea Dragon. So another round the world sailing boat. So she was built for the Global Challenge race, which is a around the world race but going west about, so the wrong way. I didn't do any of that. I just joined her in the Pacific, which was a few years ago now, as a deckhand, and it was brilliant. It was owned by Pangaea Exploration, so they do adventure charters around the Pacific and sort of worldwide now. But we had a few people on from Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute, so a research body in the US, and they came on to sample some coral reef cores. So we'd basically take them around atolls on Sea Dragon here, and then spend a day sort of diving, ferrying tanks up and down to them. So I'd be sort of laying on the surface, snorkeling, throwing down a full tank and picking up the fresh ones and just loving life. So probably my only real warm memories on a boat were from Sea Dragon in the Pacific, and it was really good times.
Warm as in temperature, right, Charlie?
Yeah.
Cool. So great collection of boats there. Moving on, 2023 news story. So I think it was a little tricky to pick something specific out, but hopefully we've got a couple of stories here that can maybe jog everybody's memory, but also just think about what was actually happening in the sailing world in the past year. That's a photo from the Fastnet race, which is a race from the Solent out round southern tip of Ireland and then back in to the English Channel. And this year it kind of brought a lot of news stories again, because they set off into a gale, and in the first night, 86 retired and 28 incidents were reported by the Coast Guard. Not only was it like kind of a big news story in the sailing world at the time, but I think it brings up a lot of questions as to the responsibility of the race organisers in events like this. If you've got 28 incidents in the following 18 to 24 hours of racing, and you've got 2 boats sinking and 84 other boats retiring, I think the race organisers have to have a think about whether they should have actually went ahead and started the race. And a lot of them retired before they even left the Solent as well, because the conditions were so bad. But it was okay for other boats. I think the winner got round in 1 day and 4 hours on a French trimaran, which is a ridiculous time to do a 600-mile race. But that was my thoughts on a 2023 news story.
The photo isn't actually quite what I was going to talk about. I couldn't find a photo. What a lot of people probably aren't aware of is early this year, the Scottish government announced plans to introduce HPMAs, highly protected marine areas, in 10% of Scottish seas. And the restrictions ranged from sort of fairly standard sort of no fishing or no fishing at certain times a year, but also up to things like no anchoring and some rather strict restrictions on all vessels. And it just came, what made it funny was what made it an interesting news thing is it came out of nowhere. They just said, 2026, so not very far away, like 2.5 years, we're going to do this. And the way the sort of boating community, the seafaring community reacted in Scotland was as you would predict. They all got back and said, you can't do that. Like, where's this coming from? Well, they had about 50% got back and said, you absolutely cannot do that. That's changing everyone's lives, their livelihoods. And the other half said, oh, yeah, it's great. But the point is that the government didn't seem to consult anyone before they made these plans. They didn't seem to work out the best way to do it at all. And then everyone, even the people that were for it, said, we think it's good, but you probably should have spoken to people about it before announcing it. And as a result, they did a complete U-turn, cut the whole plans, got rid of the lot, said, sorry, we're not doing any of that. In future, we realised we should probably speak to people who work and live on the water before we decide to completely change the way you're allowed to use it. But I just thought it was interesting to have that complete U-turn of out of nowhere, bringing in loads of really strict, crazy regulations, and then just as quick as they did, take them all away and say, "Oh, we did bad. Take that back." And they're gonna. I think they said in future they're going to take a more considered approach, talk to the stakeholders, and work out a plan to achieve the same goals, but in a way that people would all get behind rather than argue about.
It's a genuine news article, but it's a slightly tongue in cheek, and I guess it does reflect a little bit on global warming. But I just wanted to reflect. We kept our boat up in Scotland last winter. We went down the end of maybe June. The weather was just stunning. We launched the boat in stunning weather. We sailed down the west coast of Scotland. The stunning was weather. We sailed out to Tiree and Cole. The weather was stunning, day after day of endless sunshine. Out to the Outer Hebrides for about 18 to 20 days. We had every single day was blue sky and light winds. Unheard of in Scotland. It was quite remarkable and absolutely wonderful. And then the weather broke. So maybe it's not a real news story, but I think it's a reflection of global warming. It's a reflection of the changing environment. But as you know, if Scotland's going to be like that in the future, I'm happy to be a part of it. So you'll see me back up there again. So bring it on.
Did you say this wasn't a genuine news story?
It is.
I stuck my photograph in there, but there was a genuine heat wave.
I was like, your boat was on the BBC News, and we didn't even know.
That's what I thought.
The picture. Some people sitting on the beach, actually.
Yeah.
So this was me. There's been a few sort of odd bits about orca attacks of yachts in the news off of sort of Spain and Portugal since about 2020. It seemed a bit interesting at times, but the first record of that happening up in the Shetland Isles was earlier this year. It's one of those things that it seems to have caused a lot of panic in a lot of places. And working with Silurian and Hebridean Whale and Dolphin Trust, there's been a bit of contact made about this. People want to know why animals are doing this and exactly the reason for it. And of course, we don't have a clue. So it could be any number of reasons, but until you do a study on it, until you actually can spend time researching something, you're never going to know. So everything in the news about the reasons why and the causes of this is a few comments that some scientists have made that the media have kind of jumped on to make into sort of big, exciting news stories. It is interesting behaviour, undoubtedly, but until some significant amount of research is done on it, we're not going to know anything for certain. But I think chances are that we're not going to have to change our sort of leisure boat activities significantly anytime soon.
UK Sail Training do a race every year, first weekend of October, and it is essentially crewed by young people, and that's the best bit about it. But you'll have all sorts of boats. It's known as the Small Ships Race, and it's sail training. You get loads of disadvantaged kids, loads of disabled young people. You get people from every walks of life, but it is aimed at kind of the 13 to 25-year-olds, and they'll have big old boats that are in there. They say small ships, but it's anything less than 24 meters really that can do it. So they're still pretty big, and it is just a fantastic race, and it's brilliant that they're still doing it every year, and it's certainly my favorite race of the calendar, so I thought I'd put it in there as a bit of good fun.
So that on the left there is Mary Taberley, and I only found out about her this year. I don't know if there will have been a lot of news stories about her this year in all different countries, but mainly France. So you might not know Mary Taberley, but you're much more likely to know her father, Eric Taberley, who was a very, very famous sailor in the 1960s and 70s. He won a lot of transatlantic races, and he had a vessel built for the 1973 and the 1976 Whitbread round the world race, which he was expected to win. He was completely expected to win both of them. But unfortunately, both times his vessel's mast broke, and so he didn't win the race. As well, tragically, he died whilst in training for another race off the coast of Ireland. I think he was on his way to Largs in Scotland, and he fell overboard on his yacht. He wasn't wearing a life jacket. He was just doing basic race training with his crew, and he died. And at the time, his daughter Mary was 14 years old. Well, now this year she's in the Ocean Globe race, which is a recreation of the Whitbread round the world race on its 50th anniversary. And she's sailing her dad's boat. She's at the helm as skipper. And I just think it's a really cool story. She's seems to be a really cool girl and is doing remarkably well. I think she's also a very talented sailor in her own right. She's got a lot to her name already. But pretty cool to see that boat back in the race and with his daughter at the helm. I think it's pretty cool. They've just finished leg 2, and I think she's been in the top 4 for line honours both times. But there's several categories for the boat and for the handicap and everything else. So, but yeah, she's doing really well.
Yeah, I didn't actually know about this. I knew who Eric Taberley was, but it was great when Charlie brought this up. I kind of saw this before tonight, so I knew about it. I thought it was a great, amazing story that she now owns the boat, I think.
Yeah.
And she's sailing her dad's boat. Just before we go on to 2024, we're just going to have a quick look at some of our favourite anchorages. So, Alan, you're up first. Tell us what's happening here.
I couldn't resist it. Obviously, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of anchorages. But this was kind of special. I was very lucky to do some training up in Greenland on one of the old clipper boats. And we went to this anchorage, just out of shot to the right-hand side in southeast Greenland. And there is this hot pool in the middle of nowhere. It's an uninhabited island. And we anchored off here. I'd always wanted to see icebergs. I saw plenty of icebergs, and here's one here. But I just found it slightly bizarre that we could go and find this hot pool and sit in there, and it was 28, 30 degrees. It was very pleasantly warm, and there were icebergs floating all around us. So it's very memorable. It's a very special place, and very unusual. So that's why I put this picture in there. To sit by icebergs is a pretty unusual experience. So that's why it's there.
Looks awesome, Alan. But your face is so funny in that photo. You look so red.
When I saw it, I thought, I can't believe Alan's in that water. Alan hates cold water. So it explains it all now that you've told us, and I know that it was warm water.
I had no doubt. I saw it and I thought, that water must be warm.
Definitely.
Well, this one here, this is me. This was while I was skipping for the Sea Cadets. This is La Crentz Common, which is how you say it if you're northern, which is on the northernmost tip of Guernsey in the Channel Islands. It's the same anchorage. You can see my boat just behind where I'm trying to act like a seagull. The cadets had coined the hashtag my seagull selfie. So they tried to get me to perch on a rock and pretend to be a seagull, which is that me there. But it's the same anchorage, one at high tide and one at low tide. So, yeah, it's a great little spot. Not particularly sheltered in anything but a southerly, but very little wind here and what was southerly, I reckon. But, yeah, nice little spot.
Did the kids leave you out there for 6 hours to get that photo then?
Yeah. They dropped me off on the dinghy, and it was the tide was horrible at that point. So there was a swell rolling in. It wasn't nice getting on and off that rock. I got properly dunked.
I like this my seagull selfie thing though. Maybe that should.
Yeah.
This is me on little pelagic. So the pelagic that was mentioned earlier, Pelagic australis, that worked so well and was so well designed. This is the one that came before it, which wasn't so well designed. So
That's what all the lessons were learned.
So all the lessons were learned from banging your head and smacking the winch next to you and everything going wrong. But still an
Better make sure Skip doesn't see this video.
Yeah. It was definitely up there for a favorite boat ever sailed with Sea Dragon. It was neck and neck.
All right, it's pretty obvious now, Charlie.
So this is a film charter to Bird Island. So this is an anchorage on Bird Island, which is just to the northwest of South Georgia in the southern Atlantic. So the mountains there are of South Georgia. And yeah, an incredible place to go. I've never seen such big mountains just coming straight out of the sea. And yeah, the abundance of life down there was absolutely incredible. So we were anchored in there for a month. Not a great deal of swinging room. So we had 4 large lines that we on big reels on the deck. So we unrolled those and tied them to sort of large boulders and rocks to secure them on the shore. So we weren't swinging at that point. We had 4 fixed points on the shore and the anchor down as well. And we were there for a month. As we were about to leave, a big iceberg, I think you can see it just in the distance there, came past and dropped off a smaller iceberg that got jammed in that entrance there. So we'd pick the anchor up, we'd taken all the lines off the shore, and then we realized that we couldn't actually get out. So we had to re-anchor, tie the lines back ashore, and had to wait a good week for this iceberg to break down enough that we could actually get out. So we did go up to it a few times with the dinghy and an ice axe and try and hack at it, but we didn't really get much more than ice for your GMTs. So not a bad place to be for an extra week though, by any stretch.
How many times did you fall in the water there, Charlie? Sorry, couldn't resist.
There were a couple of incidents of me going for a swim. One of them was by choice. I think about 3 were not. The embarrassing thing is that on the top left of the anchorage there, you can actually see a little jetty coming out, which is part of the British Antarctic Survey Base. So it wasn't even a rough landing. It was basically against the pontoon, and I still managed to fall in the water a few times. But there we go.
I just remember everyone in the Falklands laughing their heads off at how many times they'd heard Charlie Triggs had fallen in the sea in this one little bay.
The first time was actually in the Falklands themselves, and where Pelagic was moored was on a pontoon, and the other pontoon next to it, there wasn't sort of an obvious space between them. You sort of it was one corner joining another corner like that, and you had to sort of jump across. And we were provisioning, and I had all of the toilet rolls. I think the last thing in the Land Rover was the toilet rolls. And I thought, I'll get these all in one run. And I had all the toilet rolls carried up there. And you never realise how much windage toilet rolls have until you're trying to jump between pontoons.
Oh my goodness! I just realised, is this up at the Canash, Charlie?
Yeah.
Oh well, fair enough. It's a proper obstacle course there.
I mean, that's a pirate's pontoon if ever you've seen one.
Yeah.
I thought you meant over at like the main town pontoon.
No.
At least lucky not to get eaten by sea lions.
At least no one could see me. But then the embarrassing thing was that the skipper I was with was Kirsten, who's just that we saw earlier winning the Golden Globe. So I had to go in. I'd only met her for about 2 days at this point with soaking wet trousers, soggy toilet roll, and have to let her know that I'd just fallen in.
It's pretty good news that she's pretty capable on her own, really, Charlie.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, Charlie.
No, that's fine.
Had to bring it up. This one's also in South Georgia, and the photo does not do it justice. This is Larson Harbour on the southeast corner of South Georgia, and I don't even know what it is. I don't know what it is, but I just love it there. Admittedly, most of the time I spent there in mirror calm, which always helps with any anchorage. Sometimes the wind does whistle through, but most of the time, South Georgia is a very windy place, very hostile place. Most of the time, it's mirror calm in this anchorage. And it's right down the south of South Georgia, and it is seriously cold. You can see ice just forming on the water surface there. So this is summer, and ice is forming at night and disappearing in the day, sort of thing, on the sea surface. There's a glacier at the head of it, but it doesn't chuck a load of icebergs in or anything, so you don't have to worry about that. There's some cool wildlife. There's some seals in this anchorage, which you don't get on a lot of the rest of South Georgia. So yeah, I don't know. It's just cool. It's like black and white. Like, you can see how cold it looks in that photo. The colours, it's kind of like black and white. There's no greenery. It's just a cool place. I really don't know what it is about it, and I cannot find a photo or a video that does it justice.
No, I feel the same and couldn't put my finger on it either. It also sprang straight to my mind for Stuart's title on this. And
all the mountains around, like just to the right, there's one that juts straight up to, I don't know, thousands of meters, and it's got these huge like ice cliffs on the top of it. You don't know where the top of the mountain is because there's just stacks of ice and snow on top of that as well, and it just looks so cool. It's just a very peaceful, quiet, serene place. I love it. And there's no one else there because I don't like anyone else in my anchorage.
All right, so I couldn't have Larsen Harbour because that was Ed's. But instead, I suppose this is almost similar to Alan's, in that that's kind of warm water that I'm stood in, but it's actually an Antarctic volcano called Deception Island, and there's a little gap. So it's you've got the ring of the top of the volcano, and then there's a little gap that you can sail through, and you can sail right inside and anchor up inside the volcano. And on the beaches, there's hot water to be found, and sometimes you can see steam like coming off of the beach in great plumes. But even weirder, there's then like penguins walking amongst it, looking like they're on some kind of spa day, like with their black stripe around their shoulders, looking like they've got a towel on, like they're off for a little spa day. I don't know. I just find it's obviously a really cool place. I don't know if it's actually my favourite anchorage because it can be really, really windy in there. It's not a particularly peaceful place to leave your
nearly
boat.
always is the entrance. The gap is called Neptune's Bellows.
Yeah.
Well named.
But yeah, you can't deny that, and it was often the first stop that we did with our guests on those Antarctic trips was let's go to Deception Island. Like, it's a pretty cool way to start the trip. But with the hot water in that picture, I wasn't actually so lucky as Alan. I couldn't find anywhere where the cold water and the hot water were mixing well enough to make warm water. It was either completely freezing cold or literally boiling temperature, like 100 degrees with like floating dead shrimp everywhere. So I don't know. I think I've got like my left foot in cold water and my right foot in boiling hot water. But I couldn't get in.
So I say this is like, for me, is the same as what Charlie just said. I don't think this is my favourite anchorage. I think my favourite anchorage would be somewhere on the west coast of Scotland. But it's a super cool anchorage. There's not very much room. It's pretty shallow. And so you've got to kind of just squeeze in and take your spot. You can't free swing anchor. You've got to be long line the shore. So all the boats have got lines ashore. You can probably see it on a couple of the boats. And I was there on a charter. The charter guests are just swimming off the bottom of the picture, all on a line. The water's about 2 meters. It's probably not even 2 meters deep at that point. That's why we're so far out. And yeah, barely got enough chain out. The chain's over towards the rocks in front of the boat somewhere. And it's just a daytime anchorage. You probably could. You're probably okay to stay there at night, but you actually aren't allowed. It's an island on its own between Sardinia and Corsica in the Mediterranean. But yeah, it's just amazing how you could get boats in between the rocks in such shallow water. And when you look at it and you first go up, you're like, there's no way we're fitting a boat in there. And then you actually think about how you do it, and it's totally fine. And if I'm ever back in that area, I will make a point of going there, because it was a standout spot for a lunchtime swim stop and lunchtime afloat.
I don't know if it's just the wet, nasty blizzard that we had today, but I think you win, Stuart. That looks really nice right now.
I mean, the water temperature is probably about 25 degrees. It's late summer, so...
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good.
My seagull selfie wasn't 25 degrees.
So yeah, amazing spread of anchorages there, all the way up from Greenland to Antarctica to the Mediterranean and to Seagull Island. But what are we doing in 2024? So we've got 224 topics coming up. We've got sailing plans and sailing goals, so a slight kind of difference. So we'll just crack on with our sailing plans for 2024.
So my sailing plans. Okay. Well, to be honest, we're still really enjoying our time in the Hebrides, aren't we?
Mm.
I think we're going to be here a few more months. We do call Tobermory home, and so I think for the first part of next year, at least, we'll still be on the west coast of Scotland. And we had some gorgeous weeks last year, like Alan was saying earlier. We had some really gorgeous sailing, so a bit more of that would be nice. I've got a couple of trips planned on Silurian, on a few teen teams. I do quite enjoy sailing with teenagers, same as Tom. There's a certain joy to it, isn't there, Tom?
I tell you what I think it is. Teenagers are really used to doing what they're told. Adults are really used to thinking for themselves. And sometimes it's quite easy if people do what they're told.
Yeah, there is that, but I don't know. They've got an enthusiasm that can only be found in youth as well, I think. So yeah, I've got a few teen trips lined up, and then second half of 2024, not planned yet. I've got a bit of a hankering that I'd like to go somewhere warm, but we'll see. It might just be the winter. It might just be this naff week we've been having.
So I am getting ahead of Charlie's quest for warmer weather. I'm off to New Zealand next month, and I'm going to be teaching sailing courses out there. So yeah, a range of courses, working on the South Island of New Zealand, sailing up and down. If anyone's ever been there, sailing out of Nelson, sailing up to the Abel Tasman National Park, which is where you see in the picture there. And yeah, just looking forward to getting out into some warmer weather, dropping the hook, going for a swim. And in that kind of area, there's no real mariners as such. Once you leave the port, it's just get out there, go and find yourself a nice, quiet little anchorage. Like Ed says, try and find a nice, quiet one, and yeah, just enjoy the sunshine and the warmth. So that'll be the first few months of my 2024.
This is my new little toy. I got this just as summer was closing. So my goal for this year is to hopefully try and get my children to get on a boat and enjoy it. That is my goal. So I've got a boat for them, and if there's no Wi-Fi, that is better, because it means they have to put their iPads down. But that's my goal.
Perfect place for it, isn't it? Out in Norfolk.
Yeah.
Lots of shallow water and islands and
loads of it. Loads of shallow water. Yeah.
So yeah, 2024 for me, sailing wise, is as boat manager for Silurian. So I've been doing that for a few years. Next year I'm taking a bit of a step back, and we've got a few other skilled people to help with that role, with the maintenance side of it and crewing and stuff, but I'll still be skippering a few trips. The same Silurian that Ed's been on and that Charlie's been on and will go on again. So yeah, awesome boat. And that is on the west coast of Scotland, cold water, nice anchorage just across from Tobermory, and we were anchored perfectly for the sunset, just to go into that little gap of the entrance there. So lovely spot.
My 2024 plans, there's nothing set in stone yet. I've got a couple of trips on Silurian. I've also got the owner of this boat, Song of the Whale, keeps messaging and seeing when I'm available to do some more work on this boat, and I'd like to try and fit something in. So I've put that as my photo for 2024, especially as this boat, it's been in the States for a couple of years and doing some really interesting work with right whales over there. It's another whale and dolphin research vessel. It's a pleasure to work on that boat and skipper it. But also there's rumours of it crossing the Pacific next year and maybe going to Indonesia. And if I could pick up a little bit of work in Hawaii or Indonesia, that would be nice. As a little break from the Hebrides. But like I say, nothing set in stone. Nothing usually is with these charity vessels, these research vessels. Charlie's looking at me like, when are you going on that? Like I said, nothing set in stone. But the other plans would be also, we live on our boat in the Hebrides, and we've got our daughter on there, and we enjoy some nice cruising round in the Hebrides.
I recognise that boat. It looks like my boat. So just briefly, I've had 2 years up in Scotland on the West Coast, and we brought her back at the end of last summer. And we've made the decision, really, this year we're just going to stay local. This is out in the Scilly Isles. And to be honest, our plans are to stay local, to fiddle about in Cornwall. We're lucky if the opportunity arises, if the weather becomes good. The Scilly Isles are about 12 to 14 hours away. So we can hop on the boat and whiz out there and have a few weeks out there if the weather's good. But no major sailing plans, but just to get some use out of my boat, as opposed to somebody else's boat. So hopefully.
Our goal with Ardent was to enable us to keep sailing and keep doing our thing, and share a bit of time looking after the instructor desk as well between us. So hopefully we can all get out sailing and teach, because we wouldn't want to be crusty navigation instructors who never actually go anywhere.
Really important to stay active, I think. Cool. Unusual place to tie up your boat. Heads up.
So this is the McAlvey, and it's a pretty iconic yachtsman's destination. So this is down in Patagonia in the Beagle Channel, Puerto Williams. And basically, you can hardly see it, but on the right-hand side of this photo, you've got a red boat, and just in from that, you've got a big shipwreck. It's an old ammunitions ship from World War II? It's from a long time ago anyway. It's an old ammunition ship which tied up there and sunk. And since then, it's basically become the closest thing to a marina you're going to find in that part of the world. And what you've got is then, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 boats tied up abreast on the outside of it. And then there's 3 rows of that. And it does actually get more. You can actually at times walk all the way from shore to shore in that bay without getting anything more than your ankles wet from boats tied up abreast. And bizarrely, this spot never gets any wind year round, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. There's just never any wind. It's got woods around on all sides, and just the wind, the topography just never funnels the wind there. It's amazing. And it becomes a bit of a party destination. So the bottom of the boat, the ammunition ship that you're all tied up against, is submerged underwater. But the top, the saloon and then the bridge is above water, and it's well maintained. It's immaculately varnished. It's got all different burgees and flags all over it. And there's a bit of a bar in there and some sofas and a sound system. And you can go up and stand on the bridge with the binnacle and the helm. And all the boats that are tied up there have lots of parties in there. And we had a good Christmas in there. Pretty unusual, pretty cool. If anyone ever sails in that part of the world, they'd be a fool to miss it. You can see everyone's got their lines ashore in that photo as well, because even though we're tied up to this shipwreck, by the time you're 7 boats deep, you don't all want to be hanging off the lines of the person
Oh.
closest to the shipwreck. So
Yeah, they call it the southernmost yacht club in the world, or the yacht club at the end of the world or something. But it's not really a yacht club. It is just a shipwreck where a bunch of boats go to tie up. But somehow, when somebody from the middle needs to leave, it's all self-policed and everybody shuffles around and it all generally works out okay, doesn't it?
oh, it works out grand.
Yeah.
Although everyone's moaning at the guy in the middle who was up till 4 a.m. and won't get out of bed because he's still drunk, and you need to leave.
I was just going to say, I think that's a pretty common occurrence in these places, and you end up with so many boats rafted around, and everybody then has to work together and get on with one another to share lines and get lines ashore, and it really does a couple of things. It joins everybody's camaraderie together, but also like makes people think about, oh, how extra can we tie the boats up and stuff.
So this is the boat in the Anchorage picture, Pelagic, and that's down in the Falklands. So this was some boat maintenance after that charter actually, and just behind Pelagic there is the actual pontoons where the toilet roll incident happened. So you can see it's a bit higgledy-piggledy, but this is a shipwreck. I don't think it's a named wreck. I'm sure it does have a name, but I don't know what it is. It's an old wooden boat that's there, and this is actually in the mouth of a little stream that comes down. So it's quite fun to get in there. We tied up alongside, waited for the high tide, and then just motored up. And you can see this metal sheet that we're on there. So that's there for you basically just to dry out on the beach. A lifting keel, obviously, to do some boat work. I think we were, just giving her a scrub, maybe a bit of a lick of anti-foul, changing the anodes and things. But a cool experience, an interesting obstacle to tie up to, and to get on with some boat work.
This is Big Pelagic Australis in Antarctica, tied up to another shipwreck. This one called the Gouverneurin. I don't know how to pronounce it.
I'm not pretending we can pronounce it.
Which is an old whaling factory ship that was deliberately sunk. I think they decided that it was too expensive to maintain the running of the vessel as a ship, and
no, they
sank it.
They had a fire on board. They had an unintentional fire, and the boat obviously had a lot of crew on it, and it also had a lot of very valuable whale oil. And they decided the best thing to do was just charge it at the rocks and hope that the fire was below decks, hope that the water put out the fire, but also hope that the crew and the whale oil could be gotten off and saved.
Maybe there's multiple stories, because I feel like I remember it differently. But it is an old whaling factory ship, and if you looked inside the portholes, you could still see harpoons down there. And there was also a family of terns living in it as well, which were very entertaining. We spent a few nights on each trip there usually, and so we got to know this little family of terns quite well. But also, it's kind of the best night's sleep you can actually get in Antarctica, because it's the only place that you can secure to.
So this is while I was skippering for Rubicon 3 Adventures, who kind of run ocean training adventures. So this is late at night. Everybody's probably asleep down below, or it's after dinner. The sun doesn't really set up there when we're up there in the summer. When we go to these out-the-way places, as you started seeing down in Antarctica and the Falklands and South Georgia and stuff, and Greenland, and even mainland Norway, which this is on, your limitations for where to tie up or where to anchor are so limited. But in Norway specifically, and other places as well, you keep finding these odd gems. Somewhere up the top of this fjord, we just found this tiny little jetty. I mean, there's maybe just over half the length of the boat. And you can see it's really shallow right onto the edge of the jetty as well. There was just enough water that we could squeeze in, get get some longer lines on, had to work with a few angles and stuff. And but yeah, be able to get ourselves ashore. There wasn't really a chance to anchor because it drops off, and it was over 20 meters deep, even in the shallower bits of the fjord. So while we could have probably just about got away with anchoring, you wouldn't have been completely happy if the wind had got up. It's just a little example of some of the kind of the little hidden gems of anchorages you can find. Not only that, we didn't have to pay for it. There was nobody around. There was no houses, no nothing. Just a waterfall to walk to at the head of the fjord. And we had a barbecue on that jetty that night. And yeah, lovely little spot.
This is fair exchange, and we've obviously seen lots of beautiful anchorages all over the world. But this is in the middle of a city. My boat was built up in Finland, and I took her up to the Baltic many years ago. And this is actually the centre of Copenhagen. And I was just amazed that you could bring a boat of this size right into the heart of the city and tie up alongside a regular street. And this is exactly where I am, right in the middle of the city there of Copenhagen. I'm sure I wasn't even charged for it, but it's a bit like Venice, I suppose. There's lots of waterways that you can tie up alongside, but maybe not the most beautiful of anchorages or moorings, but certainly had all the benefits of being the centre of a cosmopolitan city, and it's a nice thing to do. So there you go, Copenhagen.
This is in Falmouth. This is in the Royal Falmouth Yacht Club. So this was when I was skippering for the Sea Cadets. You can see at the front there, that is a Rustler 42, and it is tied alongside two anchored Tradewind 35s with their sterns lashed to each other to make a pontoon, because we had the Queen's sister come to give a blessing and do all that kind of jazz. And none of the moorings were quite right for the event. And so we needed to make a pontoon. You can see that little red post with a hat on it. That's a concrete pier there, underwater. So we didn't have a whole heap of room to be able to do it, but it worked very nicely. So we came in, dropped the hook of the one on the left, reversed back, and anchored that as you would normally anchor. Then we brought the other Tradewind, tied that alongside the first one, the one on the left, let go of the bow line. So it's just held on by a stern line, and let the boat pay off until it was pointing downwind and down tide, and then rode the anchor out, dropped the anchor, pulled it all tight so it was nice and tight, and then brought the Rustler up alongside to tie it all together. And it worked absolutely perfect. Very, very pleased. It went well.
Bet you weren't sweating at all tying a brand new boat up so close to that concrete submerged.
I didn't mind at all. In fact, it was one of those that we spent ages looking for how to do it, and yeah, it was good fun.
This whole setup just seems very Tom to me. So I absolutely believe it from you.
Yeah.
I think it's a great thinking outside the box. I mean, if you take away what was it, a Rustler 40?
Rustler 42.
42. If you take away the Rustler 42, you've kind of just got one boat that's got a bow and a stern anchor.
Yeah, pretty much.
What did Princess Margaret think? She's a sailor, isn't she? Did she comment on it?
She is a sailor, and she's a member of the Royal Falmouth as well, so she was particularly happy to be there. She was quite happy.
Owns a Rustler as well, doesn't she? I think she's got a Rustler 45.
She might do.
Did she notice the unusual Tradewind setup?
To be perfectly honest, I've no idea. I didn't get to speak to her. All I did was I was just in charge of the bit of the boat bit. To be fair, it was only last minute I was actually allowed ashore.
Yeah, thanks for that one at the end, Tom. I think that kind of really hit the nail on the head with how we can always think outside the boxes when we're tying boats up. And weirdly, the place that I actually learned most from it on, I don't know what others would say, is actually sailing in the Mediterranean, because you do have the option without tide to put the boat in positions that you can't usually, because you don't have to worry about tide.
I reckon you're probably right, Stu. There's a lot of places in the Hebrides where I just think, if we didn't have tide, we could do this. But I don't. because
Yeah.
we have tide.
Cool. 2024 sailing goals.
My goal this year is to get my daughter out dinghy sailing. She comes out with us for a while. That's not a picture of me or her, but she's still only diddy, but I quite fancy getting her in a sailing dinghy so that, you know, you get a different experience from a dinghy as you do to a yacht, don't you? You kind of have the wind at your fingertips. So
Yeah.
that's my goal. Ed's not into dinghy sailing, so I'll be quite glad to have a sailing partner for that as well.
I understand what people see in it, but if there's no kettle on board, I'm not interested, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, I'm going along the dinghy side as well. I've got a Wayfarer dinghy, and my plan is to try and get that one there back into seaworthy fashion and do a little bit of cruising up and down the coast. So I don't really want to sail around in circles like many dinghies do, but I want to take it out and get into all the bits of the coastline that we can't often get to because our boats are too big or too deep drafted. Just want to get into all the little bays and stuff. And I think it's something that Alan actually did many years ago in the North Island of New Zealand. I think he lived on a small boat for a couple of months. Is that right, Alan?
Yeah, it brings it back, actually, yeah. I was looking for a Wayfarer. I got something called a Sunburst. It was 12 foot long, so you've got somewhat more luxury there.
Are you going to be taking a tent on board, Stuart?
Yeah, I guess I'll take a tent or a big tarp, but my kind of idea was I'll just beach it at high tide and then like sleep ashore, or if I can find a little mooring, I can just chill out on the boat. But yeah, just kind of just go with the flow without a plan and see where I get to and try and get to places. So yeah, you never know. By the end of the summer, I might just be. If you see a little Wayfarer coming through the gap, it might be me.
I'll get the kettle on.
Coming into Tobermory.
Oh,
Is that stepladder essential?
that is for safety for getting on and off the boat. Tom, you should know. We have to have that. Just ignore the hammer there as well.
The RYA started a bit of a campaign to promote that dinghy. I can't remember what they called it. Touring. I don't know, where you're camping from your dinghies. You should
sailing routes. Yeah, I saw that. That was like a couple of years ago they did that.
Yeah, you should get in touch and see if you're going to do some West Coast of Scotland stuff. They might want to feature it.
I'd be quite jealous. Yeah, looks good.
Yeah. There's a guy who actually sailed one of those Wayfarer dinghies from the West Coast of Scotland up to Iceland. And then the next year he came back and sailed from Scotland up to the Faroes and then Faroes to Norway. And if you ever want to read a tale to never want to get into a Wayfarer, then you should read his book.
Oh, okay. I'm not surprised.
It sounds amazing what he did. It was in the 70s and before GPS, but yeah, absolutely incredible. But it does not sound fun, but obviously very seaworthy boats.
Cool. So my sailing goal of 24 is not necessarily on this boat. It's more the people. So my partner and my son there, our family's grown by one since that picture was taken. So there's 4 of us now, and it'd be nice to get out on the water with the family. No ambitions of what boat or where. I guess an overnight stay in a local anchorage or something would be nice, just to give them a bit of a taste of what it's like of the day job, and to get to give them a new experience. So that's my goal of next year.
Maybe an Ardent flotilla in the Med is coming on.
In dinghies.
Anything would tick the box, but yeah, warmer sounds like it would win people over better.
This is it's a bit mundane really, but this is maybe the realities of yachting as well, or boat ownership. And I bought my boat 20 years ago and had a bit of a major refit to get her sailing, and off we set. 20 years on, she's showing, well, she's an old girl anyway, but as I mentioned earlier, we've decided we'll stay local. We're not going to go far. We're not going to do any big cruising. And part of the reason is I want some time to actually do some work on the boat. So it's not cruising stuff, but this is really, we're so limited in the UK what work you can do on the boat, especially outside. And so I've sort of allocated this summer, fingers crossed it will be a good one, that I can do a lot of painting and varnishing and repair work and just bring her back up to scratch again, because she served me well for 20 years and I need to give some love back to her. So my not sailing plans, but my refit plans, that's what's going to happen in 2024.
Alan must have high standards because his boat is already beautiful.
It's but it's not.
This is my Drascombe again. So, it's still my sailing goal for 2024, very much similar to my sailing plan, is get the children to enjoy sailing either on the Broads or on the North Norfolk coast. Nothing too far, nothing too drastic. Maybe throw a fishing rod on there as well, and just have a bit of a bimble. A Drascombe was the very first boat I ever sailed back when I was 9 or 10 or something like that. So I thought, well, if I can get a Drascombe, and hopefully my kids will be the first boat they sail as well, and maybe they'll enjoy sailing as much as I do. So that's the plan anyway. But there she is. She hasn't got a name yet, so if anyone comes up with one.
Oh,
You've opened the gates now, Tom.
I know.
yeah.
Hull number 755 is all I've got.
We can have an Ardent competition to name her.
Yeah.
Drascombe face.
Yeah. God, no. Don't be stupid.
You know it'll win. This is me. And yeah, so there's mine and Charlie's daughter. You'll see me run off earlier. That's because she needed a wee. But yeah, we normally live on Meafer. You can just about see her in the background there, the boat. And this year we just had such a lovely time cruising. And until we bought our own boat, I never appreciated cruising. I always worked on boats and I had schedules and timetables and demands from people. And now we cruise and it's a whole different world. We'll stop on a little island and stay there a week and do things like having barbecues on the beach. And this will probably be about 8:30 after live chat finishes. We'll have rowed ashore or gone ashore on our electric outboard and had a little barbecue on the beach. And it's just a whole new side of sailing, which I love. And I just want to do more of that. Just, out on the water with my family.
I love it how you managed to pick a photo where both of them have got their mouths stuffed with marshmallows.
Yeah, clearly having the boat centralised was more important than.
Look at them! They got a stick in each hand. They're always going to have marshmallows.
That is 2023 done. So, thanks so much for listening to us this evening, or indeed if you're watching on YouTube at a later date. Thanks for joining us and getting to know us a little bit better. And hopefully we've been able to give you a bit more about us, learn a little bit more about us, but also maybe just kind of shared a bit of knowledge and a bit of insight into the larger sailing world as well.
Okay, Charlie, when the house bears about 270 degrees.
To work out our distance from the lighthouse and use that.
We might be perfectly on track, but if we're not on time...
Have a look, I've got my phone here at the effects it has on our steering compass.
So our echo sound is working, we can find a contour and follow it nicely into port.
Our left hand is pointing towards the centre of the low.